is an audio transcription of the Great Gnostic Manifesto of the second year of Aquarius, Great Supreme Universal Manifesto of the Gnostic Movement, 1963, by Venerable Master Samael Aon Weor. Chapter 1. The Aquarian Era. Much has been said and much has been discussed about the new Aquarian Era, which began on the 4th of February in the year 1962. Some organizations who are poorly informed about astrology assume that the Aquarian Era began before the 4th day of February 1962. Other pseudo-occultist organizations are still awaiting the start of the Aquarian Era. Many assume that the Aquarian Era will begin after the year 2000, based only on the idea that every 2,000 years the sun passes from one zodiac sign to another. There are those who firmly hold that Jesus was born in the first year of Pisces or some years before during the era of Aries. Actually, even when they say that Jesus was physically born 1,962 or 1,963 years ago, this is only an opinion, because in truth, nobody knows with absolute certainty what year Jesus was born. Thus, based on Jesus' birth, it is impossible to know when the new Aquarian Era starts. It would be impossible to know the starting date of the new era if we were not fortunate enough to have the Book of the Zodiac in our possession. If we open this book, we will find a marvelous plate, a splendid cosmic map. This is the cosmic map of the 4th day of February 1962. Each time a new era starts, the 7 planets reunite in full cosmic congress in this or that zodiacal sign. This is what happened in the past, this will happen in the future, and this is what happened on the 4th day of February 1962. There was a marvelous cosmic congress on the 4th day of February 1962. All the astronomers could study this great cosmic event. Everyone could check mathematically the amazing conjunction which took place in the constellation of Aquarius. Everyone saw it. Everyone checked it with their telescopes and with their mathematics. We must recognize that the sadly mistaken astrologers of India believed that this conjunction of worlds would be held in the constellation of Capricorn. Precisely based on their erroneous calculations, these astrologers predicted the end of the world on that date. On the other hand, we, in our message of the first year of the Aquarian Era, warned that those who thought and prophesied in this way would become a motive for laughter in the whole world. We cite the following paragraphs of the above-mentioned message. Quote, "The astrologers who assume that this conjunction will take place in the sign of Capricorn and not in that of Aquarius will be, in fact, confused and ashamed before the learned astronomers of the 4 corners of the earth. There also exist many ignorant pseudo-astrologers who assume that on the mentioned date of the 4th of February, the world will end. These are those who discredit astrology. These are the charlatans." End quote. The events gave us the cause because logic was on our side. The Hindustanis said that Goddess Kali saved the world. But journalists who know how to extract a point out of anything said that the goddess Kali saved the world, but did not save the astrologers. Thus, for all those mistakes in their calculations, it is as if they wish to discredit a science as ancient as the world. This is really unfortunate. The crude reality is that we are in the Aquarian Era. The era is governed by the explosive Uranus, lord of the house of Aquarius. As a result, a total change inevitably comes in all sorts of things. Science, philosophy, art, and religion should completely unite in the light of Gnosis. Politics will go through tremendous transformations. Atomic wars seem inevitable, which will produce many cataclysms, and finally a frightening and terrible planetary cataclysm will destroy the Aryan race. This event will not be the first, nor will it be the last. Remember the Atlantean humanity and the Atlantean continent. The ancient traditions say that the Atlanteans were using a mysterious force called vril, whose abuse led to the revolution of the Earth's axis, the changing of the ocean floor, and the submersion of Atlantis. This energy, this vril, is the same atomic energy. The disintegration of the atom will eventually lead to the decomposition of the atom in its turn. The result is traced back to the planet Earth and to its archaic past. Since that remote past, nature has come to work with the forces of molecular cohesion. Now we work with its antithesis, with the forces of atomic disintegration, which signifies the regression back into the chaos, back into the nebula, and therefore modernizing the old archaic cataclysms. The concrete facts are giving us the reason, and the logic is our own. Everywhere, the earth is shaking, trembling in the Americas, in Europe, in the Middle East, in Asia, in Africa, in Oceania, at the bottom of the seas, etc., sparking terrible cyclones that devastate cities. Everywhere children are born monsters, unknown diseases are appearing that science cannot cure, etc. All this is the result of atomic explosions, and fortunately, scientists still have not been able to split the electron. Unfortunately, they intend to, and in the end will succeed. That will be very serious. When they achieve it, the destruction will be dreadful, and even overtake the mental world. Then infinite terror will reign supreme on planet Earth. The entrance of the sun into Aquarius is a wonderful and terrible thing at the same time. Uranus is explosive and tremendously revolutionary, and the intellectual animal, mistakenly called man, is not prepared to handle these kinds of explosive and revolutionary forces. Any bad square or planetary conjunction in the future may be enough for man to totally identify himself with the negative ray of Uranus, and the result will surely be atomic war, provoking the great planetary cataclysm after a certain time of terrible earthquakes and horrific events. Men who hate war have worked for peace since ancient times, but every effort has been useless. All the campaigns for peace are useless. All the propaganda for peace is useless. Actually, all the conferences and peace treaties are nothing but the hypocrisy and mental laziness of those who refuse to work on themselves to achieve inner peace. War is due to many different causes that man ignores. Some of these causes are within man, others are outside of man. Wars are due to planetary influences and cosmic forces. Any bad position of the stars or cosmic catastrophe is enough for millions of people to be willing to go to war. Man is not capable of resisting those forces because, frankly, he is still not a man. If he were truly a man, he would resist those tremendous cosmic forces, and then there would not be wars. But unfortunately, man still cannot do anything. The so-called man is simply a machine driven by cosmic forces. Only the being can do, and the so-called man still does not have the being. Man only has the I within himself, and this is not the being. We must distinguish between the I and the being. The I is multiple. It is legion. The being is integral. It is unitotal. The I is composed of thousands of little I's separated from each other, often unknown to each other, and even mutually fighting amongst each other. Man is a plurality, and his true name is legion. Still, the so-called man does not have a truly defined individuality. The so-called man still does not have his own singular being. Man is divided into a legion of little I's. These I's fight for supremacy. Each of them wants to be the Lord. Each desire, hot, cold, every thought gives birth to the new I's. We carry the factors of war within us, the I's of greed, cruelty, selfishness, hatred, etc. are within man himself. When these I's are dissolved based on comprehension and sanctity, when man possesses the sacred fire, then he will incarnate his true being. Only the being can overcome bad planetary influences. Only the being can handle those cosmic forces which produce war. Only those who possess the being can be called true men. Unfortunately, the intellectual animal is a sleeping machine operating under the catastrophic influences of the cosmos. Every machine responds to the force that moves it. Millions of intellectual animals go to war motivated by secret forces which they are unaware of. Under these conditions, it is clear and logical to think that the explosive forces of Uranus have what inevitably brings atomic wars. The concrete facts will prove our assertion. The worst part is that no propaganda for peace will give results. No organization working for peace can bear good fruit. The most respected organizations which work for peace, in the name of peace, have declared war. And then what? Upon what do we agree? There actually exists in the world armies of peace in the middle of war. This is tragic and horrible, but true. We must face the problem of peace from another totally different angle. We must focus on the study of man in a frank, sincere, and definitive way if we really want peace. True interior peace can only be achieved by overcoming the influences which cause war. The universal Gnostic Christian movement comprehends what it means to enter into the constellation of Aquarius and proposes to create a new order which is in tune with Uranus in a harmonious, clear, and definitive way. The Gnostic movement intends to create a new era of conscious peace. The Gnostic movement is fighting for the intimate self-realization of man because it comprehends that only through the intimate self-realization of man can we overcome the adverse cosmic influences which cause war. The Gnostic movement is forming a new group of real men capable of fighting against human barbarism. Those who enter the Gnostic movement will become true champions of peace after achieving their intimate self-realization. Self-realization is, then, the only thing that can give us true peace. The entrance of the sun into Aquarius demands intimate self-realization. A congregation is urgently needed, or better said, a new human group of really self-realized men in order to establish a new order and save the world. The Great White Lodge of Secret Tibet is going to attempt a new era of peace, and the universal Gnostic Christian movement is the vehicle of expression founded by the White Lodge for this purpose and objective. Humanity is totally lost, but the White Lodge of Secret Tibet proposes to make one last effort to save the lost. This is like a patient who is already about to die, and yet, nonetheless, the doctor gives him medicine and does what he can, even when the case is lost. Chapter 2. An Appalling Truth. The students of all the pseudo-esoteric and pseudo-occultist schools trust that someday they will reach perfection and final liberation through the law of evolution. We, the Gnostics, could never deny the law of evolution. It would be absurd to deny the law of evolution. There is also the law of involution. Evolution and involution are two mechanical laws which process themselves simultaneously in all of nature. We cannot deny those two laws, but we cannot logically accept that mechanicity can lead us to intimate self-realization. Self-realization can only be the result of a conscious and positive work upon ourselves, and no mechanical law can do this work for us. We believe in evolution, and we believe in involution, but we do not believe, we can never believe, and we cannot accept that the mechanical law of evolution could ever awaken our consciousness and mechanically lead us to profound interior self-realization. Many living species are the product of evolution, and many others are the product of involution. For example, the dog, the donkey, the small lizard, and many species of monkeys, chimpanzees, etc. are species that have resulted from involution, and which are in clear involution. The horse, eagle, etc. are the results of evolution. It also happens that many species evolve for some time and then involute, degenerating themselves. Much has been said about the cannibals and savages in the deep jungles, and pseudo-esoteric and pseudo-occultist students, just like many Darwinists, are totally bottled up in the dogma of evolution, assuming that these tribes are primitive men in the process of evolution. Nothing could be further from the truth, because really this is an absurd assumption, since the savages are actually the result of involution and degeneration. These races come from other races and other civilizations. The cannibals and primitive savages have behind them glorious ancestors and formidable traditions. Really, they come from people who reached the pinnacle of civilization. Ants and bees, which many pseudo-occultists frankly and positively suppose are in evolution, really are creatures in the process of total involution. In archaic times, before the intellectual animal mistakenly called man appeared on Earth, there were, according to what tradition tells us, a race of demigods and titans. There is no race that doesn't remember their traditions of these demigods and titans. The unfortunate thing is that they were the first Marxist communist types. These races proposed to create a communist society, and they succeeded. They started to ban all religion and to establish bloody dictatorships. At first, it took great intellectual efforts and a willpower of steel in order to create a communist-style society. Then it all turned mechanical. Free initiative was exterminated, and as a result, it became useless to think. An organ that is not used atrophies, and since these people stopped using their intelligence and their brain, it atrophied. Afterwards, mechanical movements became hereditary, transmitted instinctively from father to son. The centuries passed, civilizations were born and died. Several Stone Ages were born and died. These creatures involuted. They were all becoming much smaller. Their forms were altered over the centuries. The social movements of Marxist communist type continued through hereditary. Today, we are amazed by the perfect organization of an anthill or a beehive, and we only regret that these species will no longer have the brilliant intelligence of another time. Really, bees and ants are the glorious descendants of pre-human races who committed the error of creating a Marxist socialist society. Evolution and involution are totally mechanical laws. These laws exist, but the problem in question, the mistake, is to attribute factors to these laws which they do not have. It is urgent to comprehend that only the revolution of the consciousness can lead to intimate self-realization. The path of the razor's edge is the path of true revolution. This path is the one that possesses all the means to develop the hidden possibilities of man. It is urgent to comprehend that only the revolution of the consciousness can lead us to the intimate self-realization. The path of the razor's edge is the path of the true revolution. This path is the one that possesses all the means to develop the hidden possibilities of man. We must recognize that very few are those who get onto the path of the intimate revolution. This indicates to us how difficult and rare it is to find men in the world with all their possibilities totally developed. The development of these possibilities is not a law. The tragic and gloomy law which exists for the intellectual animal called man is that he remains living within the circle of mechanical forces and becomes a machine man. The path which leads to the development of all the divine possibilities is totally revolutionary. We have to go against nature and draw the sword in order to fight against her tenebrous powers. We must struggle against everything that exists, against the cosmos, and against ourselves. This explains why the path of the razor's edge is so difficult and laborious. The path of the razor's edge is the path of the true interior revolution. This path is the opposite of ordinary life, the opposite of everyday life. Really, modern and common life, even when it is full of scientific, philosophical, and social interests, only leads to death, Man is full of possibilities that may remain without any development and may even disappear altogether if he doesn't have the courage to put himself on the path of intimate revolution. Everything about intimate self-realization is contrary to the interest of nature, and when a man decides to enter onto the path of revolution, nature launches itself against him with all its tenebrous powers. Really, nature needs the machine man, but it needs him as he is, with the exception of his perversity. Really, the machine man is necessary for the economy of organic and inorganic kingdoms. Man is, in relation to great nature, that which the liver cells or brain cells are for the entire human organism. Nature uses the machine man for her organic purposes and then swallows him into the Avicii, the abyss, or inferno. If all of humanity were to self-realize itself, there would be an imbalance of planet Earth and a terrible catastrophe. It is therefore very difficult and totally impossible to think that all human beings will self-realize. Only the individual can self-realize. However, it is rare to find an individual who is really willing to put themselves onto the path of radical, total, and absolute revolution. Worst of all is that nobody is obliged to help us. This is a question which is entirely personal, individual, and intimate. Now we can better explain that phrase of the Christ which says, "Many are called, but few are chosen." Or this other phrase that says, "From 1,000 that I sought, I found one. From 1,000 that I find, one follows me. One is mine." The whole world repeats these phrases. The whole world is perfectly convinced that they comprehend them. But we must seek with the lantern of Diogenes for those who can really comprehend them in an absolute and total way. Everyone believes they are chosen, and yet the elect can only be counted with the fingers of the hand. It is rare to find in the world one who is chosen. Really, all of humanity will be swallowed by the abyss. Very few will be saved. The Gnostic movement comprehends this awful truth and aims to teach the world the true, frank, and sincere path of the legitimate and authentic interior revolution. The Gnostic movement wants to save those who want to be saved, who have resolved to abandon the pride of believing that they are wise. Chapter 3. The Soul. The intellectual animal called man does not have a soul. The intellectual animal really only has the psychic material necessary in order to create soul. The intellectual animal should create soul. We must distinguish between the I and the soul. The I is not the soul. The I is not divine. The I is not immortal. The I continues after death and is reincarnated to satisfy vices, passions, and desires. That is all. Each reincarnation is a repetition of the acts of our past lives plus their good and bad consequences. The I is pluralized. The I is a legion of devils that continue beyond the grave. The body of the I is the body of desire. After death, the I in its body of desires continues and is reincarnated in order to satisfy its passions. The root of all bitterness is the I. The root of ignorance is the I. Being born is pain. Death is pain. Life is pain. The I is really the source of pain. The I is a legion of devils, a legion of eyes, and within a person there are many, many eyes. The misinformed pseudo-esoterists believe that we have a single mind. Really, we have thousands of minds. Each small eye of the legion which composes the I has its own mind, its own ideas, and its own projects. Man does not yet have individuality, singularity, nor unity. The so-called man is a legion of devils. That is all. I know we're talking in terms that the pseudo-sapient doesn't like, but what can we do? We must frankly speak the truth. Nobody likes the truth, but we must tell the truth. People think that they have a soul when in truth they only have Satan, the I within themselves. The Satan, the legion of the I, the ego, foolishly wastes the psychic substance from the psychic material in atomic explosions of anger, greed, pride, envy, laziness, gluttony, etc. Nothing comes out of nothing. If the I wastes the materia prima, the psychic material, then it is clear that we cannot create the soul. Whosoever does not create the soul is devoured by the abyss in their time and in their hour. For what is a man profited if he shall gain the treasures of the whole world but lose his soul? Matthew 16:26, Mark 8:36. There really only exists one system to create the soul. This system is that of dissolving the I. To kill the I, there can be no squandering. Then the psychic substance accumulates within, becoming a permanent center of consciousness. That center is called soul. This is soul. We need to create soul. System for dissolving the I. The I will not be dissolved with self-righteousness, nor with poses of false meekness, nor with stupid fanaticism. It is necessary to make a dissection of the I with the scalpel of self-criticism. We must learn to criticize ourselves. We need self-criticism. The I is a book of many volumes. We must study this book carefully if we really want to dissolve the I and create the soul. The first thing we need is to carefully self-observe ourselves in order to discover our own defects. The second is to intellectually analyze our defects. The third thing is to meditate deeply on them in order to discover how they behave in the various levels of the mind. Remember that the mind has many depths which we normally ignore. Many saints here in the physical world astonished the world with their holiness, but continued at other levels of the mind being great sinners, and when they discovered this, they suffered a lot and wore hair shirts. They fasted and did large and frightening penances. These saints almost always failed when they were tested in the superior worlds. We need to die from instant to instant. Only with death does the new arrive. Each time that we integrally comprehend a defect, the I that personifies it is disintegrated in the internal worlds. Each time an I is disintegrated, something new comes to us. A power, a truth, a virtue, etc. This is not to say that one will be charitable, truthful, honest, chaste, peaceful as one comes to have these virtues. Really, these virtues are born in us as a result of profound comprehension. If we profoundly comprehend that which is cruelty, then charity will be born within us. If we profoundly comprehend what is lying or falsehood, then it is clear that what will be born in us will be the ardent desire to always tell the truth and nothing but the truth, and just like that successively with all the other virtues. All this comes to us when we profoundly comprehend our own errors. If we profoundly comprehend what is lying or falsehood, then it is clear that what will be born in us will be the ardent desire to always tell the truth and nothing but the truth, and just like that successively with all the virtues. All this comes to us when we profoundly comprehend our own errors. Only on the basis of profound self-observation, intellectual analysis, and perfect meditation can we integrally comprehend each of our defects. It is useless for us to affirm thousands of times, I will be chaste, temperate, peaceful, selfless, etc., if we do not integrally comprehend our defects in all levels of the mind. If we really want to dissolve the pluralized I, we must abandon the false pride of believing that we are good and holy. Those who have read Theosophy, Rosicrucianism, Spiritualism, etc., have a marked tendency to believe themselves to be good, charitable, pure, etc. Those who have read Theosophy, Rosicrucianism, Spiritualism, etc., have a marked tendency to believe themselves to be good, charitable, pure, etc. Such persons unconsciously fight for the self-preservation of the I. They do not want to recognize their own mistakes. They are worse than the so-called profane because at least they do not believe themselves to be saints, nor do they boast of their virtues. Really, we have to start from zero if we want to dissolve the I, the myself, the reincarnating ego. Like it or not, the truth is that we are devils, evil people. If we deny the awful truth, then it is impossible to dissolve the I. If we accept this awful truth, then we can immediately begin to die from instant to instant. We must remember that crime also hides amongst the incense of prayer. Crime also hides amongst the perfume of courtesy. Crime also hides among the miraculous rhythm of a verse. Really, crime is disguised as a saint, a teacher, a hermit, a penitent, as a priest, as charity, as perfection, etc. If we want to dissolve the I, we must resolve to profoundly self-explore ourselves in all levels of the mind. We need to be sincere with ourselves. We need to be honest in life and not suppose we are good nor holy, because all of us are really wicked. What we have said is hard, very hard, too hard, and it may be that you don't like the self-righteous, but it is the truth, and if we do not recognize this, then it is absolutely impossible to dissolve the I. We must speak clearly. We must speak frankly about these things if we really want people to comprehend what the technique of the dissolution of the I truly is. Chapter 4. The Spirit. The soul may be mortal or immortal. That depends on us. All kinds of sins will be forgiven except the sin against the Holy Spirit. Whosoever fornicates sins against the Holy Spirit. Whosoever commits adultery sins against the Holy Spirit. Whosoever hates sex and renounces it sins against the Holy Spirit. Many pseudo-occultists say, I care only for what I have from the waist up, because what I have waist down is bestial, animal. Sex is bestial, disgusting, animal, absurd, etc. People who speak in this way, people who think in this way, blaspheme against the Holy Spirit and insult the third Logos, believing that they are more perfect than the Holy Spirit. Really, the Holy Spirit is the same sexual force that the degenerated infrasexuals hate and profane. The laboratory of the Holy Spirit is in the same creative organs. The Holy Spirit was sent by the Father to strengthen the soul in order to awaken all its igneous powers, in order to open each one of the 7 churches. Whosoever rejects the Holy Spirit rejects the Father. Anyone who rejects sex is like someone who wants to castrate the sun and then castrate themselves. We must transform the soul into spirit, and this is only possible by knowing how to consciously use the sexual fire of the Holy Spirit. It is urgent to create the Spirit. In the meantime, the so-called man does not possess spirit. The Spirit is living fire. The fire comes from transmutation. We need to transmute our sexual energy into light and fire. Everything in life costs something, and nothing is given for free. The price of creating the Spirit is very high. We must renounce the pleasure of spilling the semen for all of eternity. This is death for the beast, and therefore the beast does not like it. It could never like such a sacrifice. It is therefore not surprising that many read these lines saying, I do not accept this teaching, that is harmful, unnatural, etc. The I defends itself in 1,000 different ways, and it justifies its fornication in 1,000 different ways. Sex Yoga. The techniques of sex yoga are known with the name of Tantrism. There exists black, gray, and white Tantrism. In black Tantrism, there is a seminal ejaculation, and the result is fatal because the yogi converts himself into a black magician. In gray Tantrism, no importance is attached to the issue of seminal ejaculation, and some yogis ejaculate while others do not. The key of gray Tantrism is that it inevitably degenerates into black Tantrism. There also exists white Tantrism, and it is used by the initiates of the Great White Lodge in order to reach the degree of practical adept. We therefore speak of the latter kind of Tantrism because it is the only way that can be used for creating spirit. The theory of white Tantrism is to convert poison into medicine. By poison, we mean the use of women and alcoholic drinks. In some texts of the Brahmins from the sacred India of the Vedas, the sacred sexual union is considered to be equivalent to a divine sacrifice, and the woman or her sexual organs are considered to be like fire in which this sacrifice is offered. In one of these texts, the Sharapata Brahmins, the woman says, "If you choose to use me for the sacrifice, then this grants you any blessing that you invoke through me." Rare are those who can understand these words of the Brahmin woman. Really, when we are working with the third logos, we have the power to create and to request. The intelligent person can request the awakening of consciousness, and their consciousness will awaken. Begging God and striking with the hammer, we can ask and at the same time give our profound interior consciousness a prevailing command, saying phrases like, "My consciousness awaken, my consciousness sleep no more." Each order must be given with pleasure, with emotion, and with a profound longing. The result will be the awakening of consciousness. During sleep, the devotee will start to feel conscious and awake. The initiate will be able to say, "I am in the internal worlds. My physical body is sleeping on my bed." The initiate can live consciously in the superior worlds, converted into a conscious citizen of the cosmos. The problem of astral unfolding will be totally resolved. Tantric Buddhism teaches that only with the woman is it possible to reach nirvana. It is also certain that women can only reach nirvana with the male. The principal characteristic of Tantrism is to follow a special technique during coitus in order to achieve the perfect ecstasy. This technique is based on coitus reservatus, that is to say, the sexual act without reaching the ejaculation of the semen. The practice is that which is called in sacred India the Maithuna. Before the Maithuna, the Hindu yogi and yogini pass through a period of difficult esoteric preparation. A text indicates as a rule that the man must first pass 6 months adoring and desiring his wife and sleeping with her in bed for 3 months on his right and 3 months with her on his left, but without sexual contact. Only after those 6 months can you practice the Maithuna. The tantric texts clearly say that even if the semen is about to be ejaculated, the yogi must retain it and not spill it through a very special effort. In one text, it is recommended to stop breathing at the moment in which the orgasm is arriving. The book says, if the student stops breathing, he will not spill his seed, even when he embraces the youngest and most attractive woman. It is through this practice that the Hindu yogis were really initiated, achieved perfect ecstasy, and reached nirvana. With the Maithuna, the Kundalini is awakened. In truth, the Kundalini is the same fire of the Holy Spirit, the Pentecostal fire. Practicing the Maithuna is equivalent to riding a tiger. Only those who know how to ride the tiger get to awaken the Kundalini and bring it to its total and definitive development. The igneous serpent of our magical powers sleeps profoundly curled 3.5 times within a magnetic center situated in the coccyx. When the serpent awakens, coming out of its magnetic center, it slowly climbs up the medullary canal. It awakens all the igneous powers that are latent in the soul. This is how it becomes omnipotent and powerful. The Kundalini is the sacred fire, the divine spirit. When the soul receives the fire, it becomes igneous. It also unites with the spirit and converts itself into a spirit and becomes eternal. It is urgent to create spirit. It is urgent to transform the soul into spirit. There is no other way to create spirit. There is no other way to create soul. The universal Gnostic Christian movement comprehends that there does not exist, and there has never existed, any other way to create spirit and to make the soul immortal. This is why it preaches the science of sexual yoga. This is the essence of yoga. A yogi without the essence of yoga is similar to a garden without water, or animal organism without blood, or automobile without gasoline. It is urgent to create spirit. It is urgent to create soul. It is urgent to sacrifice ourselves for humanity, teaching the divine science to others. Chapter 5. The Buddha. Much has been said in the East about the Buddha and the Buddhas. It would take a long time to enumerate and define all of the Buddhas of perfection. In the heavens of Mahayana there exist thousands of Buddhas, not only in the text but also in the temples where the artists have tirelessly reproduced them. We have to say that every truly revolutionary man is a Buddha. Only the rebellious man, only the man who is capable of dissolving the I in order to create the soul, only the man who is eternally capable of renouncing the ejaculation of semen in order to awaken the fire and create the spirit is truly worthy to embody their internal Buddha. For unto every one that hath shall be given, and he shall have in abundance. But from him that hath not shall be taken away even that which he hath. Matthew 25:29. Every brave man, every truly rebellious man converts himself into a Buddha. We are talking about sincere men, about men who are always ready to risk their last opportunity. We are not talking about idiots because they hate sex and do not want to dissolve the I. We are talking about those who truly want to realize themselves in depth. If the intellectual animal could incarnate the interior Buddha to annihilate itself, then it could not resist the tremendous electrical voltage of the Buddhic energies. Only by creating soul and spirit can we incarnate the interior Buddha. In all schools there exist individuals who read a lot but do not realize anything. They do not renounce the ejaculation of the semen, nor do they renounce all the treasures of the world. People like that, people who do not want to renounce that bestial pleasure, will inevitably have to enter the Avicii. These people usually believe they are doing very well and assume that, at any rate, they can self-realize without needing to renounce their beloved fornication. The reality is that those people go into the Avicii. Tantric Buddhism is wonderful because it teaches the Maithuna and the dissolution of the I. Tantric Buddhism could never conceive of the interior Buddha as some kind of refined I. Every master in samadhi or ecstasy knows very well that the interior Buddha is beyond any kind of I. The interior Buddha is cosmic, universal, and intimate. Buddha taught his disciples the Maithuna secretly. Buddha taught the dissolution of the I to his disciples. Buddha taught the path of sacrifice for humanity to his disciples. Millions of volumes of occult theosophy, Rosicrucianism, etc. have been written, and much has been said, but the reality is that the synthesis of all knowledge is reduced to these three factors: death, birth, sacrifice for humanity. The I must die. The interior Buddha must be born within us. We must love humanity and proclaim everywhere the doctrine of the good law. The Gnostic movement, conscious of these three basic factors of the revolution of the consciousness, fights the good fight against the darkness of error. The Gnostic movement wants all human beings to possess the soul, to feel like men with soul, and is fighting to awaken the consciousness. The Gnostic movement is not against any religion, school, or sect. The Gnostic movement simply proposes to teach all humans the path of the razor's edge. We are fighting to save the drowning man's hat. That is all, no matter how many people criticize us and insult us. It does not matter if people speak against us. What we care about is saving those who are left to save, and the others whom the devil has already taken. It's their problem. Each one is what they are. Chapter 6. The Christ. Here we are in the year 1963 of the Christian era, the second year of the Aquarian Era, and yet people do not know what the Christ is. There are many who adore the Christ, yet much blood has been shed in the name of the Christ. Inquisitions and assassinations in the name of Christ, exploitations in the name of Christ, violations in the name of Christ, etc. Really, to be Christian is very difficult. To be Christian means having the being of a Christian. Being Christian means having the soul and the spirit to possess the being. Only someone who already has the being can conform to the precepts of the Christ. Satan, the pluralized I, cannot live according to the precepts of the Christ. Satan is Satan, and that is all. There exist 7 types of men. First, the instinctive and brutal man. Second, the emotional and sentimental man. Third, the intellectual man. Fourth, the man who begins to look towards the spiritual path and who listens to the initiates. Fifth, the man who has already created soul and spirit. Sixth, the self-realized man but with residues of the I. Seventh, the totally self-realized man without residues of the I. On the basis of this septenary division of human society, we can classify the 7 rungs of the ladder of Christianism. First rung, the superficial external man who is content to only watch religious ceremonies but without understanding them in their most basic details. Second rung, the purely emotional and sentimental man. This class of men are crying as soon as they are in the presence of the devotion of the saints, or as soon as the inquisitorial bonfires are built in order to burn alive those who were qualified as heretics. Religious wars have always been caused by this class of men. Third rung, religious intellectuals who want to interpret the Holy Scriptures from a purely intellectual point of view, but without illuminated intellection, much less intuition. This class of people exists in great quantity, especially among the Protestants, Adventists, Anglicans, Jehovah's Witnesses, etc. Fourth rung, this class of people are very abundant in all schools of theosophy, Rosicrucianism, yoga, Christianism, the Rosicrucianism such as that of Max Heindel, spiritualism, etc. These are people who are beginning to truly fight for their intimate self-realization. Fifth rung, Christians with very serious errors, but Christians. Sixth rung, perfect Christians, but who are fighting to finish with the residues of the pluralized I. Seventh rung, absolutely perfect Christians, Christians without the residues of the I, great, totally self-realized masters. This same order, these same 7 scales of religiosity, can be applied to Buddhism and all great religious faiths. The rank of absolutely perfect Christian can only be reached by one who has the Gnostic initiation. Every Buddha who renounces the happiness of nirvana for the love of humanity after much suffering can reach the Gnostic initiation. The Buddha Jesus achieved this initiation. Jesus received the Gnostic initiation at the banks of the river Jordan when John baptized him. At that instant of baptism, the resplendent dragon of wisdom, which is the intimate Christ, incarnated in Jesus. John also is a Christ because John also incarnated the intimate Christ. The venerable master of wisdom, Gautama, is also a Christ because he also incarnated the Christ. Hermes, Buddha, Quetzalcoatl, Zarathustra, Krishna, Lao Tzu, and many other great avatars are Christs because they embody the Christ. Really, Christ is not a human nor divine individual. Christ is an infinite and universal cosmic substance. Paul of Tarsus invites us to form the Christ within ourselves. That is to say, he invites us to assimilate within the human organism and within the soul and the spirit the wonderful substances called Christ. What we are saying in these lines, the first and second and third type of men will never accept. The men of the fourth type begin to accept it. The fifth type totally accept it and fight to realize it practically. The sixth type has already realized it in a relative way, but only the seventh type are those who have absolutely realized it. The Hermes, the Quetzalcoatl, the Zarathustra, etc. Christ is the solar logos. The solar logos is the perfect multiple of unity. Neither individuality nor the I exist in the logos. In him we are all one. He is the army of the voice, the great word, the verb. Much has been said about Jesus of Nazareth, and many false Christs have appeared in the streets. Recently, a mythomaniac put into his head the idea that he was Jesus Christ. He grew a beard and long hair, put aside his jacket, trousers, and vest, took off his shoes and put on sandals, and then trumpeted from the rooftops that he was Jesus Christ. As is natural, simple and gullible people who are not difficult to find accepted everything he said literally. The former mythomaniac taught black tantrism, wrote several books, and founded an organization of individuals who spilled the semen, unredeemed fornicators. Fortunately, this mythomaniac impostor ceased to exist, but only after having done great harm to poor, suffering humanity. The curious thing is that every time a false Christ dies, the people still justify the death by saying, "In a little bit, and you will not see me, and again in a little while, and you will see me, because I go to the Father." It is amazing to see how the tenebrous accommodate the words of the gospel to their situation, how the people are tricked into deception by utilizing the same words of Jesus the Christ, from whose mouth those same words were never used for deceit. The divine Rabbi of Galilee bluntly warned us, saying, quote, "If anyone says to you, 'Here is the Christ,' or 'There,' believe it not, because false Christs and false prophets shall show great signs and wonders so as to deceive, if possible, even the elect." End quote. Matthew chapter 24, 23 through 24. Really, the chosen can be counted on the fingers of the hand, because you can only consider the chosen to be those who are creating the soul and spirit. In Nirvana, there exist many Buddhas of perfection who have not yet reached the Gnostic initiation. When a Buddha renounces the happiness of Nirvana for the love of humanity, they reach the Gnostic initiation. Then they incarnate the resplendent dragon of wisdom, the intimate Christ. Whosoever wants to achieve total Christification must be absolutely revolutionary. The path of the razor's edge is totally revolutionary. Every true revolutionary converts themselves into a Buddha. Every true revolutionary converts themselves into a Christ. Chapter 7. The Universal Gnostic Christian Movement. The Gnostic movement has lumicials, sanctuaries, learning centers which are established in many countries of the earth. This movement is not against any school, religion, order, or sect. The Gnostic movement struggles to start the new Aquarian age, and in fact, and in its own right, it has been initiated among the august throne of thought. There is no need to leave religion in order to enter the movement. Within the Gnostic movement, there are many individuals belonging to different religions, schools, and sects. The doctrine which is taught in the Gnostic movement is the doctrine of synthesis. This is the doctrine of the new era. The Gnostic movement and the authentic and legitimate Gnostic Rose-Cross School of Coumenes are intimately linked. The founding president of the Gnostic movement is initiate of the Rose-Cross Temple of Coumenes. The Temple of Coumenes is internal, and it can only be reached in the astral body. All the Rose-Cross and pseudo-Rosicrucian schools of the physical world are only aspiring Rose-Cross schools, because real and genuine Rose-Cross schools do not exist in the physical world. The Gnostic Church and the authentic Rose-Cross School of the Temple of Coumenes are intimately united. The shield of the Gnostic movement is the Lion of the Law, with 5 stars representing the Buddha Maitreya, the 5th Buddha or 5th avatar or initiator of the new era. In front of the constellation of Aquarius we have Leo, the polar opposite of Aquarius, which will fully define the entire future of Aquarius. The symbol of the authentic and legitimate Gnostic Rose-Cross School of Coumenes is the rose upon the cross. It is necessary for the rose of the Spirit to blossom on our cross. If we analyze the constitution of man, we find the 7 principles distributed as such. 1. Physical body. 2. Vital body. 3. Emotional body. 4. Mind. 5. Willpower. 6. Consciousness. 7. Intimacy. In summary, these principles are reduced to 4. The vital is the only superior section of the physical body, so the first body is the physical body. The second body becomes the astral. The third is the mental, and the fourth is the body of conscious willpower. The 6th and 7th principles are embodied within us when we have the 4 bodies, or the perfect cross. Certainly, the intellectual animal does not have the astral body. It only has the body of desires, within which is the legion of the eye. Having astral body is a luxury that few can afford. A man can live very well without an astral body. His physical body has all the functions necessary for life. A man without an astral body can produce the impression of being very intellectual, even spiritual, when really he only has a body of desires in which the I, or Satan, lives. The astral body is only born with the Mithuna, sexual magic. Only the angels and the masters have the astral body. The third body is the mental body. The common man has many minds because every I, every devil, has its own mind. The true mental body is created within the legitimate astral and only born with the Mithuna. The fourth body is that of conscious willpower. Man actually is the intellectual animal. He does not have conscious willpower. He only has desires which focus in this or that direction, which are incorrectly called willpower. The true body of conscious willpower is born within the mental body by practicing the Mithuna, sexual magic. The seeds of these four bodies are within the seminal system. Only with sexual magic can these seeds germinate and can every one of these bodies be born. When we have the four bodies, the internal Buddha can incarnate in us and the rose can blossom upon its cross. The only true Rosicrucian is one who has incarnated a Buddha, a Christ. All others are aspiring Rosicrucians. Christian terminology defines these four bodies as follows: flesh body, natural body, spiritual body, and divine body. The fleshly body is controlled by 48 laws. The natural body is controlled by 24 laws. The spiritual body is controlled by 12 laws. The divine body is controlled by 6 laws. Whosoever rejects the Mithuna or sexual magic cannot create the astral body, mental body, and body of conscious willpower within themselves because nothing emerges without it. Just as the physical body is born from the creative energy, so too are the superior vehicles born through the creative sexual energy. Really, it is only the true man who has the perfect cross, the 4 perfect vehicles. Only a man like this has the soul and the spirit. Only this is truly a realized man. The Gnostic movement comprehends these terrible truths and proposes to teach humanity the mysteries of sex and the path of the dissolution of the I. Gnostic Rosicrucian studies are very profound, and through these studies there exist thousands of lumicials, learning centers, Gnostic sanctuaries. The main temple of the Gnostic movement is the Summum Supremum Sanctuarium, situated beneath the earth in a deep forest of South America. All those people looking at our books can associate together in order to form Gnostic groups. Every Gnostic group converts itself into a Gnostic lumicial. It is urgent to inform the founding president of the Gnostic movement in writing of every new lumicial which is established. The Gnostic movement will support every lumicial which is established. Any group of people can associate and reunite in order to study. All the groups will be attended by the patriarchal headquarters of Mexico and become a lumicial. You should study these teachings, find friends and organize a group, and write us for the appointment of a chief of the lumicial. We have books which will be dispatched. You will receive lessons. Form your own lumicial. Study our books. Write us. Reminder: it is urgent to remind all the directors of the Gnostic sanctuaries that this movement is maintained with the voluntary contribution of everyone and by each one of the brethren. We have to send thousands of letters to all parts of the world, important letters, letters that guide, that direct, letters which organize groups, that open new sanctuaries, etc. We have to spend money. A lot of money in letters, in mail, on paper, envelopes, etc. If you love humanity, if you want this movement to progress in order to bring the light that will save the lost to all corners of the earth, comprehend, be sympathetic, help us to save people. Remember that you who gives will receive, and the more one gives, the more one receives. Reminder: it is urgent to remind all the directors of the Gnostic sanctuaries that this movement is maintained with the voluntary contribution of everyone and by each one of the brethren. We have to send thousands of letters to all parts of the world, important letters, letters that guide, that direct, letters which organize groups, that open new sanctuaries, etc. We have to spend money, a lot of money in letters, in mail, on paper, envelopes, etc. If you love humanity, if you want this movement to progress in order to bring the light that will save the lost to all corners of the earth, comprehend, be sympathetic, help us to save people. Remember that you who gives will receive, and the more one gives, the more one receives. But whoever gives nothing will receive nothing. If you love humanity, help us with your alms for the great work. Inferential peace. This has been an audio transcription of the Great Gnostic Manifesto of the second year of Aquarius, Great Supreme Universal Manifesto of the Gnostic Movement 1963 by Venerable Master Samael Aun Weor. For more information, please visit us at gnosticstudies.org. That's gnosticstudies.org. Many blessings.